2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the other criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Christ of God, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the King of the Jews."
I've been the thief. I want my own miracle. I read about the blind man and the woman who touched his cloak. I read about Lazarus and the little girl who got up. I've seen love after loss and recovery after addiction. So I want my own miracle. And if it helps, I'd be willing to beg and barter for it. I'd be willing to kiss the floor, to sell a portion of my days, to press my knees to the ground, to live with this ache. I'd be willing to pray all night, to pray until my voice was hoarse. Save yourself and us, or just save yourself and me. But eventually my demands soften. Eventually the edge in my voice smooths. Eventually time wears down my insistence. And save yourself and me will become, if you're there, just don't forget me. Please don't forget me.
One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God?" he said. "Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." And then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise."
That's what my companions and I are guilty of, intent to bring paradise to our poor, oppressed people, no matter the cost. That's not how Rome sees it, of course. They charge us with robbery and sedition. We'd heard Jesus was back in town and that he'd ridden in like a king of old in challenge to Pilate's grand parade, and we thought he must be here to kick off a rebellion. After all, his preaching about the nearness of God's kingdom and calling himself Son of God in defiance to Caesar, what could he possibly be promising but revolution? And how does revolution come about if not with swords? So we ambushed soldiers to seize their weapons. Clearly, it didn't go as planned. Clearly, Jesus never meant to lead an insurrection after all. So here we are, about to die with him anyways, and I get what my companion feels betrayed, why he mocks the man we'd pinned our hopes on. Still, I can't bring myself to hate Jesus. All the way through my arrests, my trials, my struggles up hills, I've been pondering. Could Jesus know a different path to paradise? A way to hold yourselves somewhere between violence and passivity as you fight for justice. A kind of revolution that refuses to use the emperor's weapons and instead creates its own tools for dismantling oppression. I shouldn't have any hope left, not while hanging here between life and death, with no riot, no liberation, no second chance for me. The Messiah we thought would overturn Rome is slowly suffocating to death beside me. Things are hopeless, and yet absurdly, I hope. Today, I head for paradise. Tomorrow, others will take up the work for a better world until God's kingdom comes to earth at last.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. We sing, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Oh, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
Jesus, remember me, a dying man's plea. We all want to be remembered. I once heard someone say, I had kids, so I'd be remembered after I die. I smiled, thinking he was joking, but the look in his eyes told me he wasn't. Maybe he was simply being honest. Because maybe the only thing more unsettling than the idea of dying is the idea of being forgotten. Is this the fate that we need to accept, that in the end we die and will be forgotten? Did the writer of Ecclesiastes have it right, that ancient voice that says, meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless, generations come, generations go? This seems to be the feeling of one of the thieves hanging on that cross next to Jesus. He doesn't seem to care, he's just angry. He's defiant in the face of death. He doesn't accept anything that's happening to him. He didn't accept that he was a criminal. He didn't accept that he did anything wrong. He didn't accept that he was dying. He turns his ire toward Jesus, mocking him, saying, "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." He resisted everything, but he still died. The other thief, the one that's been called the repentant thief, took a different approach. He accepted that he was a criminal. He accepted his punishment. He accepted that he was dying. He accepted everything, but still, he died too. Whether you resist death or accept death, it comes for you. There are some things that we just can't control. The fact that we're going to die is one of them. That course is set as soon as we come out of our mother's womb. In many ways, we resist this truth. It's said that we live in a death-denying culture, and it's not that we don't know we're going to die. It's that we say we're going to die someday, with the emphasis on the someday. And when we're young, we can project so far out into the future that we don't even have to worry about it or consider it. And it becomes part of our habit not to talk about it, not to think about it. One of those things you can just ignore. And we live in this way for so long that when it does come a knocking, when your parents finally come to you and they want to talk about their death, we just brush it off, saying, "Dad, don't talk to me about dying. You're going to live for many, many more years." This is the approach the disciples have taken. You're not going to die, Jesus, not anytime soon. Even though Jesus never seemed to be afraid to bring it up. In fact, even when they refused to hear what he was saying, he just kept talking about it. Death is what actually, and talk of death, is that actually turned his face toward Jerusalem. He talked about his death before he even turned. But then as they were on their way there, he started sharing more and more specific details about it, about how it was going to go down, about how it was going to happen. And then at the Last Supper, Jesus again explicitly talks about it. But his disciples resist, and they deny it. I've heard some say that Jesus came to die, that he had to die. But saying that Jesus chose it doesn't quite capture it. Seeing it coming is not the same thing as orchestrating it. Death was done to Jesus, not by Jesus. It was done by the religious authorities and the political forces of a violent empire. Jesus didn't choose it, but he did accept it. And the reason he accepted it was because he was not willing to accept some other things. There were things he chose to actively resist. The resistance started very early on for him. It started in his hometown. They were so proud of Jesus, proud to call him their Messiah. But then he turned their belief that God's grace is first for us on its head. He reminds them of the stories from Israel's past, the widow at Zarephath and Naaman the Syrian, to describe how God's mercy skipped over the Hebrew people in order to bless the foreigner. He refused to let their vision of a Messiah serve their nationalism, and for that they tried to throw him off a cliff. He resisted the economic social order. At a dinner party of a prominent religious leader, instead of getting along, as a guest is supposed to do at a dinner party they've been invited to, he resisted the exclusivity and the privilege that so often comes with wealth and proximity to power. He refused to play the game of status culture and resisted the idea that the rich and powerful are wealthy because they are blessed by God. No, he said, it's the poor, crippled, lame, and blind that God blesses. This rubbed against their sensibilities, and it caused the muttering against Jesus to pick up steam. Later, when Jesus walked into the temple, a place that should have been holy, a place of prayer for all people, what he saw was business, money changers, the sound of commerce, and people becoming rich off religion. And so he flipped the tables. He shut it down. He resisted turning prayer into profit. This wasn't good for his reputation or his safety. But he refused to stop. He refused to apologize. As things really started to turn against him, he resisted any move toward violence or retaliation. Earlier, he had preached, love your enemies and pray for those who abuse you. Do good for those who hate you. He never looked for payback or retribution, even to those who did him wrong. As the levers of power turned against him and those in authority came to arrest him, Peter began resisting with force. He cut off an ear of one of the guards, but Jesus just said no, and he healed the guard's ear. The stories, they could go on. Jesus resisted everything that dehumanized, everything that exploited, everything that excluded. He resisted because he was faithful. And it was his faithfulness that threatened everything unjust. He didn't just choose to die, he chose to resist. He refused to accept the status quo. He refused to be complicit. And because he chose resistance, he saw the inevitability of his death. He really didn't accept that it had to be inevitable. But he did see that it was going to be inevitable. He didn't choose it, but in the end, it was accepted. There are things in this life that we cannot change, but there are also things that as followers of Jesus we must not accept. And I wonder if we've confused these things, resisting that which we must accept and accepting that which we must resist. Do we resist death even though it is inevitable? And do we accept injustice simply because, hey, well, that's just the way things are? We accept homeless on the street, shootings at the schools, a neglect of basic dignity against the immigrant, the isolation of our elderly, the anxiety of our young, and the despair of the addicted. We accept these things not because we're cruel, not even because we don't care, but because we feel powerless or overwhelmed, or because we're told, hey, that's just the cost of living in the world as it is. Of course, not everything we resist gets changed. And that's part of the ache of Good Friday. That we can't always fix what's broken. That even when we love, we still lose. And in fact, if we love, especially those who God loves, the ones who are oppressed and suffering and facing injustice, we could lose even more. And if we speak up, we could be silenced and we may be persecuted. So what then are we to do? Jesus doesn't give us a clear answer on Good Friday. He gives us instead a costly witness, a way that accepts suffering but refuses to make peace with the systems of harm, a way that grieves the brokenness while refusing to let it have the last word. He absorbs its violence, he absorbs our sin, and still says, "Father, forgive them." The cross, although not chosen in the way that we might think, it wasn't a passive moment either. It was the culmination of every act of resistance, every refusal to compromise, every confrontation with evil, every moment he chose mercy over convenience, truth over comfort, love over fear. And in that moment, hanging between two thieves, one man mocks. The other man prays. One man defiantly resists. The other man dares to hope. He doesn't ask to be rescued. He asks to be remembered. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus replies, not with a strategy, not with a fix, not with a way out of death. It's too late for any of that. But it's never too late for the promise of God. Today you will be with me in paradise. In the middle space between resistance and surrender, between judgment and mercy, between all that has been lost and that could still be found, we find his promise. Because right here, in the mess, in the violence, in this space in between life and death, between despair and hope, Jesus meets him. That's the mystery of Good Friday. Not everything we accept becomes good, but some things must be accepted for grace to break through. And we find that when we accept him, he meets us where we are, and he will not leave us there alone. He will make the journey with us to what's ahead. So what do we do in the face of that which we cannot fix? We remember the thief. We remember his prayer. Jesus, remember me. And we trust somehow, even here, we will be with him. Because sometimes that plea to be remembered, the ache we all carry to matter, to be seen, to not be forgotten, will find its answered at the cross. First, to the thief, a criminal. Jesus doesn't leave the thief where he is. He offers the promise, today you will be with me in paradise. To Jesus, we are more than just a memory. We are his companion. Jesus accepts his death so that we might resist everything that would keep us from life. He resists indifference. He resists cruelty. He resists a world where only the strong survive. And he does it all so that nothing might stand between you and the promise. Not your record, not your reputation, just you with him and the thief. One among many that the world tried to throw away. He won't let you be thrown away either. Maybe you've been estranged. Maybe you've done wrong. Maybe you haven't done enough. As you plea, hear the promise. Today you will be with me. We come to the cross, bringing what we cannot fix, what we cannot carry, what we cannot understand. And we find the one who accepts his death so that we might not be forgotten.
There's a place where mercy reigns and never dies. There's a place where streams of grace flow deep and wide, where all the love I've ever found comes like a flood, comes flowing down. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of you. Where your love ran good and my sin washed white. I owe all to you. I owe all to you, Jesus. There's a place where sin and shame are powerless, where my heart has peace with God and forgiveness, where all the love I've ever found comes like a flood, comes flowing down. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of you. Where your love ran and my sin washed white. I owe all to you. I owe all to you. Here, my hope is found. Here, on holy ground. Here, I bow down. Here, I bow down. Here, arms open wide. Here, you saved my life. Here, I bow down. Here, I bow down. Here, my hope is found. Here, on holy ground. Here, I bow down. Here, I bow down. Here, arms open wide. Here, you saved my life. Here, I bow down. Here, I bow at the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of you. Where your love ran good and my sin washed white. I owe all to you. I owe all to you. At the cross, at the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of you. Where your love ran and my sin washed white. I owe all to you. I owe all to you, Jesus. You may be seated.
As we come to the end of our second movement, where Jesus dies, there will be several sounds during and directly after the reading. The sounds that will happen during the reading are the ripping of fabric and a loud voice of Jesus' last words. After the reading is over, this is where you all get to be involved. We will recreate the crowd's grief, and the earth will quake. At that time, please join us in stomping your feet, patting your knees, or any other movement that feels right to you. Finally, a bell will ring, which will signal that there is the time to stop the noise. And then the bell will toll 33 times, representing the number of years that Jesus lived. Following this, we will sit in silence of Jesus' death before moving into the last movement at the tomb.
It was now about noon, and darkness covered the whole earth until about 3 o'clock, while the sun stopped shining. Then the curtain in the sanctuary tore down the middle. Crying out in a loud voice, Jesus said,
Father, into your hands I entrust my life.
After he said this, he breathed out his last breath. All the crowds who had come together to see the event returned to their homes, beating on their chest and seeing what had happened.
night. You kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the fire that never dies away, never dies away.
After the betrayal, the accusations, the torturous execution, there seemed to be nothing left of Jesus' life work. His vision of an upside-down kingdom where the last are first. The empire stomped out his spirit, and that was the end.
Except there were the women who stayed with Jesus until the very end.
Except there was the body that had embraced and fed and touched so many lives, a body that was still honored, still cared for, still loved.
There was Joseph of Arimathea, who gave up his own tomb to bury the Son of God, a member of the same Jewish council that charged Jesus with blasphemy. Joseph reminds us that Jewish people were not a monolith. He voted against a conviction. He risked safety and good standing to recover Jesus' body for the women who cherished him.
And there was ritual, the motions that carried the women through their grief, burial, and the anointing of the body, with Sabbath rest in between, giving them space to mourn.
We end tonight in the space between death and resurrection, as the friends and followers of Jesus go home devastated and afraid. We linger with them because grief matters, even when we know a joyful new beginning is soon to come. The grief and pain are still real, and deserve to be heard.
And this is where we end tonight, in this time of death and of grief and of pain. As you go out today, there is a sheet that contains a poem on it. That poem is not for right now, it is for tomorrow, a time of waiting, a time where God seems to be silent even though God was at work. I invite you to take the poem on the way out and to read it at some point tomorrow. We go waiting with those who wait, mourning with those who mourn. Amen.